Elizabeth, you have more or less answered my question, but I'm still going to steam ahead. You are obviously the brightest person on the political scene, perhaps ever. That gives me a great sense of hope. But help me reconcile. The last time I looked, Harper had a majority, right? I shared the sense of urgency if he could be got out of office by December, the December deadline. But help me reconcile. You are so bright and articulate and forthright, precious resource. But the numbskull thing still exists. To my mind, my fear is, unless you parties that offer the alternative work together in a what do you call it, a coalition or whatever is effective, I lose hope. And so we just had the NDP thing. This guy committed to never working with the Liberals, and I'm sure
I've already experienced his elbow in my face. I know he doesn't want to work with Greens either.
But help me reconcile that. Like,
yeah. We will have to
flesh it out.
We absolutely must cooperate. There's no question about it. I was fortunate when the Liberals were led by Stéphane Dion that he and I thought we had to, in the interests of climate, set aside partisanship. We were slammed so hard by the NDP for trying to make that statement, and then when the NDP were ready to cooperate with the Liberals, Dion had been replaced by Ignatieff. I mean, at every stage, all I can say is, I see my role, small as it is, in the reality of the House of Commons and on the political scene, as trying to create a climate where the political climate will embrace greater cooperation. And when I say greater cooperation, I also mean with conservative members of Parliament who may not themselves be so happy with dear leader. We need to reach out to everybody, and before the next election, yes, a lot of people focus only on 2015 and the election. As I say, it's too late. But I will do everything I can to try to convince Tom Mulcair we need to work together. I think I was encouraged by Nathan Cullen's strong showing. Perhaps that'll give them a message, but it didn't sound from this morning's press conference as though that was a message Tom Mulcair was ready to embrace. So, again, you need to go in and see your NDP members of Parliament too. Everybody needs to be talked to so that they know what Canadians want. Because what MPs want should matter a whole lot less than what Canadians want.
Can I just put an addenda? Can I just another quick one? I don't understand why Harper, with all the things, the misdemeanors and so on, that to my mind, it would be a wonderful nemesis if he could be removed, that he was also the first inmate of his mega jails. Is that a possibility?
See, I'm much kinder than you, Bill. I'm happy to see him out of office, having more time with his family or taking more piano lessons. I don't need to see him jailed. I just need to see him out of 24/7 drive. So, I will say that one of the reasons that things went so badly in 2011 is that there was collusion between the national media and the other parties to keep me out of the debate. Yeah. And I'm hoping next time I'll get in the debates, but it's not for sure. So I may again need your help to try to demand that in advance. But I think that really was part of the dynamic in 2011, and I hope, because I do raise issues a little bit differently, so we'll see.
Because you showed them up at the last debate.
There was that. So I think I'll give much shorter answers so that everybody can, did you get through everybody tonight?
We'll try.
Okay.
1 minute answers.
I just saw Ron's hand going 5 minutes. Uh-oh.
No, I was just going to.
I'll keep it concise. One thing that has come up that's really concerned me as a scientist is this deliberate suppression of data that I've seen kind of in the government that I've heard about. I was wondering if you could speak to that a bit and if there's any hope to ease up those restrictions a bit more.
Yeah. In case anybody didn't know, I think it was 2007 that the Conservatives dictated that no government scientist is allowed to speak to the news media without permission from the Prime Minister's office first. And no scientist or civil servant is allowed to speak directly to a member of Parliament either. So people I've known for years can no longer answer my emails. Now, I had better access to certain people in government before I was elected because they didn't have any rules that you couldn't speak to your friends. But once one of your friends is a member of parliament, that's it. And coverage on climate, things moved in lockstep. The rules that you are not allowed to speak to reporters led to a quite precipitous drop in coverage of climate science. By the way, quick thing to look for in the budget on Thursday, there's a lot that's likely to be cut and destroyed. They're going after the Environmental Assessment Process, the Species at Risk Act, Habitat Protection, the Fisheries Act, and the Migratory Birds Act. And the language you will hear from Jim Flaherty's mouth will not be that these programs are being cut. Programs are going to be sunsetted. Brace yourself. And anything that's about to be destroyed is being streamlined. So we need to fight back, and again, scientists in particular, get your voice, get your letters to the editors of the Globe and Mail and National Post, for everybody. Writing the mainstream press, getting letters published and letters to the editor, and tracking those horrible media comment areas. Even if you just spend a little bit of time giving a thumbs up, thumbs down to fight back the climate deniers, it's much, much appreciated. John.
Hi, I've known this about 4 years. What you see here today with this lady is like a sort of molehill on a mountain of knowledge. She's absolutely mind-boggling, the amount of knowledge she's got and the way she does stuff. Anyway, just one thing you said, section 64 or 65, I'm not sure which part D, that's where Harper gets his power from because he has to sign the writ. And he threatens people that if you don't vote for him or do what he wants, he won't sign your writ to go in Parliament. So we need all to lobby that. With respect to a couple of people, the answer is here with all of you. I've gone to about 70 different groups. There's 2 people in this room I recognise from all the groups I go to. I was at a water group yesterday. There was a 12-year-old girl from out in Kingston who didn't like a movie about the environment. She got off her rear end, she wrote to the mayor, she spoke to them, and she's got 15 communities. 15 communities are now doing the green shift or whatever it is, the blue shift or whatever. So they're changing the way they do stuff. 13. Now how old are we? And we can do it. We've all been dumbed down. Well, I am because I'm British, but background. But Canadians are dumbed down by the bureaucracy we live in. And every one of you can get off your rear end and do something like this little girl did. Go out there. There was a meeting last week for May Day. There was about 36 groups there. Yeah.
All right.
You don't need to ask a question, John. That's good.
All right.
I don't. I'm going to finish. 36 groups were there to do with May Day. There were no religious groups there. I go to indigenous groups. We're all a little like, we talk about a mosaic, but there's a brick wall around the mosaic. We've got to break that down so we all work together. All of us. I was in Occupy. How many older people there? I'm telling you, get off your end. It's a great country. We're going to fight for it. This isn't about politics. It's about Canada as a country. And next week, there's a democracy rally at 2:30.
Where?
So it's at Old City Hall. We had one 2 weeks ago. 2,500 people there. This is not about party politics. It's about staying in this country. As Elizabeth staying. And thank you, Elizabeth, for being such a great human being.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, John. And please do show up at rallies when you hear about them. Yes.
Thank you, Elizabeth. My name is Janice Kyle, and my question is around the intersection of faith and politics. And just a little bit kind of context to that it was my relative who actually was the editor of the Prairie Messenger newspaper in Saskatchewan during the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and he was a Benedictine monk, and he was the first person to speak publicly in the media in Canada on behalf of Tommy Douglas and Medicare and the CCF. And so for me, that intersection of faith and activism and politics goes a long way in my family. And I too have been called very nasty things, as my relative was, called a communist, and that he could not be a Catholic if he was involved in politics and supporting Tommy Douglas. So I'm asking this question not because I was at the NDP convention and volunteering for Nathan Cullen as well, but because I'm very worried as a theologian about this rise of really right-wing Christian fundamentalism in the Harper Conservative Party. That I really do not believe that faith is just kind of like off there, and in politics is something else. They are bringing their certain brand of religious politics into Canada, and I'm just wondering, especially in light of what's happening in rural ridings, and I grew up on a farm, that people are really getting duped into believing that this particular political ideology of Harper is consistent with their faith, and particularly with this particular brand of Christianity. So how do we fight that, especially in rural ridings?
Thank you, Janice. I think, and this is one of those issues where it's so important for the voices to come from established religions too, to set up, I mean, as a Christian, and I know I'm sorry for people in other faith traditions, I don't want to dominate this with Christian, but this is what I know, is Scripture's pretty clear that Jesus was the most tolerant person going. He sat down with tax collectors and sinners, broke bread with them, healed people on the Sabbath, and otherwise broke rules he wasn't supposed to break, in the interest of justice. There's a social justice thread that is absolutely, and I've said this on TV sometimes, and I get in trouble with that. I don't find anything in Scripture where Jesus said anything against homosexuals or gay marriage, or, but he was really clear he didn't like poverty. That was a very clear message. And injustice. So I think we need to identify where people, and you're right, people are being used. I happen not to think, I don't see any particular evidence of Stephen Harper being driven by, religious principles. I don't see that in him as a person. It may be true, but I've never seen it. But that doesn't mean he's not using that perception to gain more ground with certain people. And we should not abandon them. If they're looking for something to know that there's a moral purpose to a society, I think it's appropriate for there to be a moral purpose to a society. What kind of society are we if we're completely amoral? Not such a, selfish individualism will reign. So I think we just need to not me, although I tend to do it anyway and I shouldn't, ground yourself in what's clearly scriptural, which people will accept and go forward and take them on.
Thank you.
So, Tom and Ross, I think we're already 5 minutes beyond. In order to keep ourselves, so maybe you can catch up with Elizabeth afterwards. Is that okay?
No. Well, Elizabeth was already, I'm sorry, but since she's already sort of answered the question, I just want to put a label to it. All that stuff about talking to your representative, that group, that table at the back, Citizens Climate Lobby, I've been a member of that for a year, and it's a great venue of helping us organize. We'll pair you up with other people in your riding and so on, and have talks and techniques for making that forward. My question was going to be about proportional representation, but you didn't have time to answer.
Well, we need I will say that the only reason that we're stuck in this position, that as Bill's question was about what do we do, and my Janice was working for Nathan, the notion of how do we deal with this dysfunctional electoral system, which can give us the minority of people who actually voted, out of the 60% who voted, choosing conservative candidates in a situation where roughly 6,000 votes across 12 ridings made the difference between a minority and a majority government, and they ended up with 39% of the popular vote. That dysfunctional political system has a name. It's called first past the post, and only 3 modern democracies operate under that system: Canada, the UK, and the United States. Now, the United States has enforced through a series of quite tight regulations and laws that have been established over years for the self-serving benefit of the Democrats and Republicans. They have a hardwired two-party system, very hard for a third party to enter in. But Canada's been a multi-party society since 1900. We've never had fewer than 4, 5, sometimes 6 parties on the federal ballots. And going back to John's point, I am introducing a private member's bill to get rid of the power that a leader of a party has, that they must sign the nomination papers for a candidate. That was an accidental creation of more power for a leader of a party that isn't necessary at all. It's just an accident that happened when they revised the Elections Act in the 1960s. So just to say that the solution to this struggle for how do we cooperate, even though we really don't like each other, which is always the subtext that no one wants to say about political parties. I've never seen anything like the hatred between the NDPs and Liberals. It is insanity. They hate each other more than they fear what Harper's going to do to the country. It's just, like as I said, it's a form of mental illness. It's got to be nuts. So if we could cooperate in one election and hold out the promise that when this election's over, we'll just change the voting system, and you can vigorously vote for the party you like best without this weight on your mind that you need to figure out. And strategic voting is also the enemy of high voter turnout. Because anytime you go in and vote strategic, like, okay, I'm going to hold my nose, I'm going to vote for person X, although I really want this person to win, but I'm so afraid of that person. And then when the campaign's over, you found out you voted the wrong way, and if you voted for the person you really wanted, they might have actually won. And then when you feel if you feel physically ill after voting, you're much less likely to do it next time. So, to get people voting, they should fearlessly vote for what they really want. And that will only happen when we get rid of first past the post and have proportional representation. So I see the two things as being quite linked. How will we get proportional representation very soon? Make an arrangement between all the parties that are currently in opposition, that when the election is over, there's a firm commitment to change our voting system so that in all future elections, Canadians will be able to vote for the party they really believe in, for the policies they really believe in, and then voter turnout will go up, there'll be more women elected to Parliament, there'll be more visible minorities elected to Parliament, we'll have a different political culture, and maybe we'll have fewer robocalls. So, thank you very much.
So, thank you to Elizabeth for her courage